Good morning. This has been an eventful first week for me as the police chief in Fairfax County. This morning, I responded to a homicide in Chantilly, where I was able to interact with detectives and crime scene investigators. And I told them, and I'll share with you now, one of the main reasons the Board of Supervisors selected me, in my opinion, is my dual capacity to ensure we keep this great county safe. This is obviously one of the safest jurisdictions of its size in America, and I'm determined to work with the community and work with the men and women of the Fairfax County Police Department to keep it safe, and that's always a priority in public safety, no matter what year it is. But the Board of Supervisors and the county exec and the deputy county exec were very, very, very clear with me that they wanted a reformed police chief. And not just a police chief who talks about what he or she is going to do with reform, but a police chief who has demonstrated reform in various assignments. And I've done just that. I have led significant reform efforts working with 2 consent decree police departments. I was with the Prince George's County Police Department during the lifespan of our consent decree from 2002 to 2008 or 9 or so. So I was afforded an opportunity back then as an up-and-coming commander to be exposed to the best practices that our profession has to offer, and not just best crime fighting practices. I'm talking about community practices, building legitimacy and building trust. And we're in the DMV, so everyone is familiar with the reputation Prince George's County had for many, many years before we went into the consent decree. And when we finally emerged from that time period, that reform time period, we emerged better with the crime fight and stronger with the community. Those 2 things are not mutually exclusive. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. As I made my way and was selected as the police chief in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, the jurisdiction next door, they were in crisis. One of the first things that I did there back in 2013 and 2014 is we adopted a co-responder crisis intervention team model that still serves to this day as a national model. We put mental health professionals and police officers in the same car, and they responded to calls for service when communities were in crisis, families were in crisis, and individuals were in crisis. We can't treat mental illness, we can't treat behavioral crisis as a criminal justice problem. So many years ago, we saw that as an opportunity to introduce services, diversion services, to a vulnerable community to get people the help they need and not to put handcuffs on them and take them to jail. During that time period, I was also the first police chief in Maryland to mandate that all of my police officers carry Narcan. Narcan, as you probably know, is the brand name for naloxone, and that naloxone prescription drug is used to save lives. And for folks who are overdosing from heroin and opioid, police officers throughout the country, and we certainly started a trend in Anne Arundel, were able to save lives by administering naloxone to folks who were suffering from an overdose. I made my way then to the city of Baltimore, first as the deputy police commissioner, and early 2015, and if you recall the arrest and the in-custody death of Freddie Gray and the national attention that garnered and the unrest that followed in the city of Baltimore, it eventually led to the departure of my predecessor and the appointment of me to police commissioner. I was the 39th police commissioner in the city of Baltimore during a very tumultuous time. I remember the mayor of Baltimore saying to me at the time that she appointed me, we can't have another riot in this city. It was a tumultuous time because the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division was initiating its pattern or practice investigation in the city of Baltimore. Based on my experience with DOJ, I stood up a full-time team to interact with DOJ civil rights attorneys in the Baltimore Police Department. It was the first of its kind. It resulted in about a year-long investigation that we participated in. We didn't wait for the ink on the consent decree to dry. We started making reforms right away. The DOJ issued eventually a 163-page findings report that went back many, many years and detailed many instances of unconstitutional policing that disproportionately and negatively impacted communities of color and young people. So we went about the hard work of negotiating a consent decree in the city of Baltimore. If you remember, during that time period, the Obama administration was on its way out. The Trump administration was on its way in. I worked tirelessly with Vanita Gupta and her team to ensure we were able to finish the consent decree negotiations so we could bring long overdue and much needed police reform to the city of Baltimore. I believe Baltimore is on its way to reform. It's a slow and steady process. It's going to take time, but if not for the consent decree in the city of Baltimore, I don't think those reforms would be happening at the rate they're happening now and at the rate they'll be happening in the future. I'm very proud of my reform efforts. After I left the city of Baltimore, I was selected as a Leadership in Government Fellow